I spent my time as an electrician as a maintenance sparky, and I remember being in workplaces where the ETU may have been about 3% of the workforce, but we hold a very strong strategic position. What really causes us some grief is the laws that force us into a single bargaining unit. The greatest success we've always had is where we've broken away from the other unions have been able to do a single deal, a deal on their own, either with the maintenance unions or just the ETU. We've done that in a number of places, but you require employer agreement. You've got to put pressure on the employer to agree. And if they don't agree, and most are very reluctant to because they know that we'll be suppressed in a majority when we're a minority position. But even in the power industry, in our last EBA rounds, we broke and did ETU agreements away from the ASU, which I think will set us up much better for this next round of bargaining. Often I've seen our members on picket lines carrying the agenda for every worker in the plant. If you talk to any of our members in the City Power dispute in '97, they were out for about 107 days, fighting for an increase that applied to everybody there. So it is a very difficult thing legally to be able to step outside of that single bargaining unit, and is very much the desire of most employers to keep us in it.
In respect of protecting your existing conditions, one method we've used is the common law deed. Conditions that can't be put in your new EBA, in the contracting industry, we've put them in a common law deed, which is just a contract. It's a contract like your sort of sale of home contract or any other contract you enter into. It's an enforceable document. It's a document between the union and the employer, and it's not restricted by the work choices legislation.
Issues that the magistrate or a judge will take into account in determining penalty is your record. So the more time you nod to an offence or a contravention, the tariff tends to increase. Also, the government has increased the penalties under work choices, I think, to 33. Yeah. But then with the ABCC legislation, we're talking about penalties, I think, even high, up to 100. Yeah, that's it. And then we also have the ACCC with the Trade Practices Act, where the maximum penalty, I think, is $750,000 for one breach. Yep. And we've unfortunately, and costs against you as well, and that's the same with the Building Industry Act. So under the previous laws, the penalties were quite, I think the maximum was $10,000. Yeah, they've bumped them up. And they've bumped them up to, I suppose, guard against that. But, and the other really important issue, and perhaps the best answer to the idea that we contravene and just keep paying pretty modest penalties, is after a while you start to get closer to deregistration proceedings. Deregistration is now easier under work choices than before, and we've got to keep one eye very closely on that, because that will be a disaster.
Be aware of this, the Commission has no powers to help you. It can't order the company to do it right. If you want to challenge it, you end up going to the federal court jurisdictions where we're forced to and spend the money and all that sort of stuff. Justice for workers is very expensive. We've got Brendan McMahon over there as a steward's being discriminated and tackled by Alcoa. We'll spend legal money on that. We had Colin Williams Steward, ACI Spotswood, in the last couple of years. Colin was discriminated on. We took it to the federal court. ACI got a $19,000 fine. It would have cost us at least $50,000 in legal fees to get justice. So the Industrial Relations Commission hold no hope. They've killed off everything. The Libs have killed off everything. Where you could go to a court once and ask for a fair go, now you've got to spend a whole lot of money and take your chances in a federal court or so on. That's the problem we've got. When we've set about our industrial agenda, I think everyone will know that the laws that apply in place at the moment are not respected by this union, and bad laws, might disappoint Julia, won't be respected by this union no matter who's in government either. And we certainly are aware of them. We're conscious when we operate. Also under this is that officials face criminal prosecution now. Criminals now. Once upon a time, you know, the old painters and doctors used to carry around guns and shoot people. That was deemed a criminal activity. Now you just have to be a union official. It's a criminal activity. Already in the last 2 years, I would estimate in legal costs and fines, we have paid in excess of $500,000 and break the law every day. You know, every law is a gun at our head.
You've got to recognise that you have a leadership role to play. Don't underestimate, you won the 36-hour week under a Tory government. Now, that is nothing short of a miracle. I mean, you lived with it, you saw it, but I mean, outside, who else was getting the 36-hour week? Now, you're going to have to dig deep and figure out what's the next 36-hour week. You can't replicate that. You don't go back and try and win that battle over again. The terrain has changed. What worked in the past won't necessarily work again, and that's why it's really good you've got people like Josh and your own in-house counsel to navigate that terrain. But you're going to have to come up with a different position to offer a new lead, because you and the nurses down here from where I sit are the strategically most well-organised, most powerful group of unionists in the country. And it's not a matter of sitting around lamenting what else is going on. If you people don't offer a lead, no one else will.
20 years ago, the ACTU Congress said that the ETU would no longer exist. And we've spent that time proving them wrong. And becoming part of bigger unions worries me to the extent that we lose the uniqueness of what we got. And I make no mistake about it, and it's not just my thinking. A lot of us that have been around the ETU a long time love it and we want to build it up and make it strong. We had a real long-term vision about where the union ought to be. And I'd hate to see us become part of a big conglomerate union that we ever, you know, we've got our own uniqueness and our own strength, and we kiss no one's arse, and we're sort of beholden to no one, which is fantastic. And with the assets we've got, if we can keep building that and we can hold them, and we're smart with them, we keep them in our trusts, we become like a bit of a rock. We'll take some massive hits, but we'll still be there at the end of the day. So it's a matter of whether you want to change the ETU into something like that. I'd resist that. But and I don't think you have to worry about some unions, as John said. I think they'll pass by the wayside. The way they're headed, though, they will find it very difficult to keep going.
Our state government is talking about privatising our power industry at the moment. And Aurora Energy is still, it's a GBE, so it's still state-owned. But if we lose that, the effect on the ETU in Tasmania is going to be devastating. We've got about 650 members there, which in Tassie is nearly half our union. And for the blokes that work for the SEC, I don't have to explain to you what the impacts of that will be. It'll crucify the joint, plus the jobs and everything else in the community. We've taken some decisions about how we're going to treat that. We're going to put a strategy in place, and at the moment, because we've got an EBA in place, we can't take industrial action yet, but we will if we have to. One of the things we've looked at doing is putting in place a political campaign. And I managed to convince the ETU members in Tasmania to join the ALP. And in 5 days, 170 Aurora employees joined the party. And if you don't reckon that had an effect, you want to come and see the state conference delegation that we're going to get up, people's heads are spinning around on their shoulders, right? So what people in this room need to do is be very aware of the 3 areas of campaigning that you can involve yourselves in. The community campaigning with Your Rights at Work, right? The industrial stuff you all know about, and you know, we can make changes that will improve your ability to do that. And there's the political stuff. If you want to be an ALP member, the reason I joined the ALP was to try and make a difference. It wasn't to land pre-selection or anything else. That was something that just happened. I don't know how it came about, but here I am, right? And it doesn't always sit very comfortably. But the way to change the party is to become a member, get in there as a group, and kick the shit out of the thing. Right? That's the way to make a difference. Because at the end of the day, the laws are made by our politicians, whether we like it or not, and often we don't. So if you want to make a difference, maybe that's something you could consider. You know, and I'm sure Dean and the other boys around the ETU would assist you in filling out your membership forms.